Look, we are live. Did you just get a notification for us going live there?
I think I probably did.
That's clever.
No, I haven't. I haven't.
That was just really good timing then, wasn't it? Hi, Abby.
Hi, Rich.
It's good to see you. Although I've seen you for the last kind of 5 minutes. Back like my brain, as I said to you, I've done 3 coaching sessions already. My brain is having to work hard just to stay focused today, so it should be fun for you. But welcome everybody. If you're here, please say hello to us so we know we're talking to somebody, and make sure that you are active in the comment section, asking questions, kind of challenging Abby as much as you can. If you can, the better. The more questions, the better. But don't throw her under the bus too much. But as look, you've watched this podcast enough times, Abby, to know that for the first 90 seconds that I just ramble on a little bit, allowing people to join and get ready. So in kind of 15 seconds, we'll kind of get going and we'll get into the swing of things. Oh, that's something first.
People join in a minute.
Yeah.
It takes a little while, doesn't it, for the algorithm to push everything out and people to join and grab their coffees and get settled in.
Yeah. Also finish their meetings they have just had or wherever it is. Or even just remember this is going on, or even if they're scrolling through in LinkedIn and seeing us talking. Look, we'll get started and we'll get into this. Welcome, everybody. It's nice to see you if you're there already. I'm really looking forward to this and this conversation with Abby, just to really understand or hopefully provide some information about how people can manage their money well from a couple of different angles and aspects, so that they've got some tools. I was definitely, and I'm still one which has a weird relationship with money, but I think it's really important to try to understand money as much as you can, because that helps us in our kind of wider life and our well-being, because it has such an impact on our well-being and how we feel about it. I know one of my friends who used to work at Samaritans once told me a long time ago that one of the biggest calls from men they receive is financial stress, through to debts and that kind of stress. So for me, it's a really close thing to my heart, and I think it's something people will need to understand and figure out a way to get good at it anyway. Look, I'm just rambling. Abby, lovely for you to join me. Thank you for joining.
No problem at all.
Bear with me today, Abby. It could be one of these sessions. Look, let me just quickly do my introduction. Then we'll pass the mic over to you and let you introduce yourself. And then we'll get into it. I'll ask you the first question.
Go for it.
So, hello, everybody. My name's Rich. You might know me already. I am a high-performance exec coach, helping senior leaders and people in general thrive, perform at their best, and be their best version of themselves, both in work and outside of work. I'm also the CEO and founder of Employees Health, which is a workplace wellbeing company, helping companies educate their people and support their people around wellbeing. So if you want to know a bit more about that, please come drop me a line and we can have a meeting. But for the sake of this, we are not going to talk about it anymore. Abby, your turn. Can I pass the mic over to you to introduce yourself and tell the viewers who you are and what you do?
Absolutely. Hi, I'm Abby. I'm a money expert, and I help workplaces support the financial health of their employees, so that mental health, overall well-being, retention and productivity are all improved. So how do I do that? I provide educational workshops, training, coaching and support for employees, managers and senior leadership, to help improve financial literacy and reduce financial stress, which Rich has just mentioned, in their organisation. And I'm really passionate about improving conversations about money in the workplace. mainly because I believe that having an more open culture about talking about money like we are today allows people to speak up and ask for the support they need. And it's really interesting that Rich has just mentioned about the Samaritans and mental health, because one of the leading causes in the UK of poor mental health is financial stress. You know, people genuinely really worry about it. And, you know, men in particular, again, you pick that up, Rich, you know, they have the added pressure whether it's right or wrong, or whether it's how it should be, men tend to take the pressure on themselves for being the breadwinner in the house. And, you know, that adds an extra layer of worry and concern and pressure on people. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Lovely. Thank you for the introduction. And yeah, obviously everything you do is great. And I think this is going to be a really interesting conversation around, I mean, I think I'm going to walk away with some tips and some coaching from it. So even if anybody else doesn't, I feel like I'm going to. So yeah, wicked.
I hope so.
Abby, it'd be really good to understand your journey to why you are where you are today, and what led you to doing this now.
Okay, so I have been in the financial services industry for 25 years. I know I don't look old enough, but it's true. I am a qualified financial advisor, a qualified mortgage advisor, and I was years ago a financial advisor for a very, very long time. And I think I really, really enjoyed it. I was very lucky. I started advising quite young. And I loved it. You know, the money was good. I really enjoyed meeting people, going out, you know, going to people's houses, you know, providing them with the advice. But it didn't really fulfill me. And when we're talking about sort of heart-led careers and, you know, doing things that light you up, I would be like, hand on heart, it didn't really light me up. I enjoyed it, and I enjoyed what I was doing. So I worked for two major high street banks, and along with that came a lot of pressure and a lot of sales pressure, even though, you know, you're providing financial advice to people. And me and my husband both decided at the time that we would quit our jobs and sell up with a 7-month-old baby and move to France to run a bed and breakfast for bikers. So something completely different. We became completely disillusioned with what we were doing. My husband was an insurance broker at the time, completely disillusioned, and we went and did something completely different. But the call of the UK came back to us. We've got our little boy's actually got additional needs, and they can be much better met in a UK school. We weren't 100% happy over there, so we decided to come back. And at that point, I discovered financial coaching, which I absolutely loved. I think it kind of really provides what I couldn't provide through financial advice. So I dealt with a lot of people who were high net worth, which is somewhere between 500 and £2 million to invest in their money, providing them with advice on how to grow that money and grow their wealth further and further and further. Whereas financial coaching is much more about helping everyday people with their everyday challenges with money. And, you know, there is a real lack of education in the UK around money, and people genuinely don't necessarily have the skills or the knowledge or the confidence to be able to manage their money on a day-to-day basis. And so through coaching, I discovered that is, you know, something that you can do and you can help with. And at the time I was working for a startup company who were looking to provide financial coaching via an app. And we then moved on to working with organisations to provide financial wellbeing in the workplace. And then sadly at the beginning of the year we lost our funding, and the company closed, and I'd made a decision that I loved it so much what I was doing that I would continue doing it on my own. So here I am. Some of the things I've done in my career is that I created a financial coach training program to take somebody who knows nothing about finance right the way through the financial knowledge and the coaching skills to become a financial coach. So I wrote that, and that was accredited by the London Institute of Banking and Finance. So that was an amazing highlight of my career. and done lots of training and mentoring, and wanted to bring all of those skills together and provide that really in the workplace, so that rather than on a coaching one-to-one where you're having to do 10 calls in a day, Rich, that, you know, I can actually talk to people about common problems that they're having about their, around their finances, like, let's just pick one, budgeting, or why should I put money into a pension, so that I can then bring that to many people at once.
Love it. And you can see your energy shift as soon as you started talking about financial coaching and helping others. So no, look, I'm really excited to kind of get into this with you, just because I can feel that passion and that desire just to share knowledge as well. So look, my first question to you, Abby, is what's the most important thing to you when people are looking after their money?
So for me, and we do this in our own household finances, is giving every pound a purpose, really. So what that means is that it's very easy to get your pay into your bank, isn't it, and just go off spending, like, and then find at the end of the month, I've got maybe if you're lucky, 50 to 100 pounds left, let's say. What should I do with that? Well, actually, giving every pound a purpose is almost the opposite of that. That at the beginning of payday, you say, right, okay, I'm doing this bit is for my bills. This bit is for my, going out, enjoying myself, buying new clothes, holidays, whatever that looks like to you. And that leaves me this amount, and I'm going to put that amount away first into whatever is my priority. So I would say that's quite an important thing to do. The other tip, which I've got a little side note to mention, is like, Rich, I'm going to ask you a question. When was the last time you checked? Well, actually for you, it's probably a bit difficult because of what you do, but when was the last time you checked your pay slip? To make sure that your personal information is right, your national insurance number is right. I got caught out of that when I was very, very young, when I very first started work. You used to have to, you type everything, don't you? But I had to write my national insurance number. It got read wrong. And my national insurance number for years was wrong. So, it can be, mistakes get made, don't they?
Yeah.
So your tax code, make sure that your salary, that what you're being paid is right. The top line figure is correct. So, that would be probably number one tip, is check that you're being paid correctly and that information is right.
Yeah. In regards to your first question, the last time I checked my salary or my payslip would have been 10 years ago, when I had a salary, when I had a paycheck. and then why is doing that so important?
Because it's quite common for your tax code to be wrong. So that's, and if your tax code is wrong, then you're being paid wrong, or you're paying the wrong amount of tax. And potentially you could end up having to pay more tax later on, or the government actually owes you money back in some cases. And a lot of this information is taken digitally from various different places to generate a tax code for you. And if any of that information is wrong or has got mixed up, or then there can be a problem with your tax code. So I think probably first thing out of everything, if anybody is listening who's employed, is just to check your pay slip, make sure it's right. If you want any information on that, reach out to me and I can give you some help and what to look out for. Please, DM me.
What should people be looking out for? What's like the top 3 things?
So I would say your national insurance number, as I was caught out very early in my career. Luckily, it had, in the background, it had been sorted out, and the national insurance people had actually realised, the DWP had realised and had cross-referenced all my contributions, but I had been paying for, it must have been about 3 or 4 years under the wrong number. So definitely, from my point of view, check your tax code and make sure that your salary is correct.
Okay, perfect.
We put faith into all this, into digital solutions, don't we? But there is a human element to everything, and it takes one slip of the finger, and you could be being paid wrong.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, so looking after our own money, what that kind of first part is, and you said about putting a value to every pound or purpose to every pound. What then do you, once you've done that, what is there any way or good things you can do to make sure that you're getting the most for your pound?
Okay, so I guess there's a step before that you probably need to consider, and in order to get to that place where you're allocating money to different parts, is that you need to get clear on what you're being paid and what's going out of your bank account, and make sure those two things add up. And do kind of like almost a housekeeping exercise, and check like your direct debits, make sure you've cancelled ones that you don't need anymore. There's the dreaded subscriptions that we all fall foul of. You sign up to Amazon Audible and for 3 months for free, and then you find out 6 months later you've been paying for it. All of those kind of things, like those general housekeeping things to try and keep on top of your money. But the most important thing is to really know what's coming in and what's going out, and make sure that one covers the other, and that that you've got a positive income coming in. And then once you've done that, your question was, how do you allocate it, wasn't it?
Yeah. So what's that kind of next bit from the purpose? Before you go on to that, then is when you're checking your direct debits and you're checking your money in versus your money out. Have you got any tips or anything there which people can do or should be looking out for?
So the best way probably still is the old-fashioned way, if you can do it, is to print like maybe 3 months worth of statements off, and then go through with a highlighter and categorize your spending so into what your needs are. So things like your mortgage, your rent, your groceries, your council tax, things that have to be paid every month. And it will look slightly different for different people, because different people have different needs. And it can be a little bit controversial if you sit down with somebody to say what you think is a need isn't what I think is a need. But like, the general principle is it's things you can't live without. And then moving on to sort of the second category is your wants. So things like going out for dinner, holidays, presents, Christmas, all of the additional things that and luxuries that you enjoy on a regular basis. Netflix, maybe, although somebody might say that's a need. Try and say too many wants, but you get the idea. So categorize those expenses so that you really know what you've got, what's important and what's your priority, and then what's the second priority for you, and looking at whether you can cut back in any of those areas at the same time.
So you've only split that up into wants and needs. Is there any more?
There is a further category that comes kind of after you've done that, which is savings stroke paying down debt. And when I say paying down debt, we're not talking about your minimum payments, because you have to pay those, so they would go into a need. This is if you want to maybe pay your debt down quicker than via the minimum payments. There is a third category. But when you're looking at your income and expenditure, it really is just categorizing those two things just as a starting point. Then if you want to try and look at maybe a framework of what that should look like, or what you should be aiming towards, a really good method, which is quite popular, is the 50-30-20 rule. Have you ever heard of that, Rich?
Yeah, I have. For a friend, Lucy, who taught me that a long time ago.
So the 50-30-20 rule was it was actually I was going to say invented, but it came about with it was a US senator called, I'm just looking it up, Elizabeth Warren. She popularized the 50-30-20 rule in her book. It is a little bit controversial because people get really stuck on those numbers, Rich. And it's not about those numbers. What it is about having a plan and having, something that you're aiming towards, that that you can, and a plan for your money, really, isn't it? So how it kind of translates is that you spend 50% of your income on your needs, hence the reason you categorize them, and then 30% on your wants, So you can spend your money guilt-free and not have to worry about it. And then the remaining 20% is really geared towards savings or, as I said, paying down your debt further. So it gives people something to work towards. Now, obviously, I live in the southeast of England, so 50% for my needs is probably a little bit maybe too smaller an amount, and it might look more like 60% for some people and 70% for other people. And it's not about, as I say, it's not about those numbers, and that's what people get really hung up about. But what it is about actually, like, I've got a plan. I know that I need this amount of my income to pay everything so that I'm not missing a bill. My energy is covered, my food is covered, I can get to work, and that money is put to one side. And then with the remainder of the money, I'm going to work out how much I want to spend on things that I want now, or maybe things that I want in the future by saving. But it is a good place. It's a good place to start. I mean, there are other techniques. What's quite popular on TikTok at the moment is the envelope method. Have you seen that on TikTok?
I think so, but can you explain? Yeah.
So basically, you get your income, but you literally go and draw it out of the bank, go and get loads of envelopes, and you stuff the envelopes with the money. Obviously, it's not possible for your bills, but you take the money that's left and you actually put it into envelopes or a weekly budget, and you don't open the next one. So you know exactly how much money you've got available to you, and in cold hard cash, which obviously is more real than using a debit card. Really interesting talking about debit cards and money being more real. My son is 9. He's had a £20 note for about 18 months in his wallet. Absolutely red line. I'm not spending that money. I'm saving it. It's my £20. It's in my wallet. I can see it. I can touch it. We got him a debit card for his birthday. We said, we'll put the £20 on the debit card for you. He literally spent it within a week. Because it wasn't there. He couldn't see it. It suddenly becomes, something not as tangible as cash is. So I think that's why the envelope method is becoming a bit more popular.
Yeah, and you can see how that works, can't you? Also, it's a physical thing that you can break up, whereas in your account, it's hard to do that unless you create up these accounts. And I think on my NatWest, I don't think I can do that as easily. I know on a Monzo, I could probably do that a little bit easier.
Yeah, Monzo, definitely. And there's lots of these. Starling's another one. You can have like different pots. You can actually set it so that when your money comes in, Monzo, I can't think if I can do it automatically, but it asks me every time money comes in.
Okay.
Whether I want to, last time you did this, do you want to do the same again with this money?
Yeah. That's really, that makes life a lot easier. What about, let's talk about my situation then as an example. You said I don't have a pay slip, right? I don't get paid monthly. And you'll know this challenge as well now you're self-employed. When you don't have money as a regular, it comes in kind of sporadically throughout the month. It's way harder to manage. What's the suggestion around that?
I think you have to be really disciplined. And again, you do need, especially around the needs, you need to know exactly how much money you need each month to be able to meet those needs. But you've got to be really disciplined. So if you have a good month, you've got to try and work out how much of that you need to put aside in case you don't have such a great month the next month, or you don't have any income. It is much, much harder. You are correct. But it's again about knowledge and knowing what's coming in and going out and having a plan for that, really. And trying to at least make sure you've got enough money in one of your pots to cover the essentials. But what then becomes more important is having an emergency fund, which we kind of have a hierarchy of how you should plan your finances. And if you think the bottom layer is kind of things like your bills, your groceries, and Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I'm saying Maslow. I'm sure Maslow's hierarchy.
Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
But it's similar to that. So Maslow's hierarchy of needs is you need the bottom layer to be sorted and feel psychologically safe before you can move to the next level, and so on and so forth. It's actually fairly similar for your finances. So you need the foundations right. You need your food, you need your shelter, you need those needs met before you can start looking up. And the next kind of level up is financial resilience. And when we're talking about financial resilience, the first kind of part of that is having a rainy day fund, really. And, that becomes even more important if you are self-employed and you've got fluctuating income, that you've got a pot of money you can call upon if you need to. And that's where that next 20% starts coming into place, because once you've got your needs, once you've got your wants, then you've got a little bit of money left over, you can start then building up the next layer, as it were, on the financial planning hierarchy, or the managing your money hierarchy, which would be emergency fund. So typically we'd say, an emergency fund should be somewhere between 3 and 6 months worth of expenditure.
And that's in a pot somewhere safe.
Somewhere safe, but it's easily accessible, because what you don't want to happen is the boiler break and you need to call out the gas man and you can't get hold of your money for 3 days or 5 days. So the downside is you're not going to get the best interest rate ever for that, but it's not there to grow. It's not there to, save yourself. Now, you may be able to, as a freelancer, be able to predict the peaks and troughs of your money, so you can possibly put some money aside to cover the troughs, as it were, with knowing that you might like a week's notice or a month's notice is absolutely fine. But when we're talking about an emergency fund to cover you for things like unexpected expenses, like the car breaks down or the boiler breaks, I've already said that one, but in order to help prevent that financial stress and the worry getting bigger, that it's in an easily accessible place. Almost like if you're talking about Monzo, or one of the digital banks, in a separate pot.
They're
available.
I think I use mine, isn't it? For years I used mine in an ISA, but now I think I put mine over into I put mine over to that, as well as like a Monzo saving account.
So you can
literally make some money on it at that point.
So, we've been through years of obviously really, really low interest rates. So, potentially you might have had years of your emergency fund not earning anything. But it's all about planning, isn't it? And it's all about, like, once you've got to your 3 or your 6 months or whatever you're comfortable, then you can start looking to, like, what am I going to do with this next? And even if you've got debts that you're trying to pay down, it's a really good practice to try and at least have a little bit of an emergency fund at the same time. Because what you don't want to be doing is paying off your debts really, quickly or more quickly, and then find that actually you've got to use your credit card to pay for the car repair, or you've got to pay for, you're going to get into more debt that's possibly cost you more money than the original debt to be able to do that. But also saving a little bit starts creating a better habit each month, that you're putting some money away. You get used to it. You can automate it. Today it's really easy to automate and, get those foundations of savings going. So you get used to it.
And I think, I wish I was on a salary, because that process of bringing that money in and then being able to split it all up would make so much more sense. Because then once you've done that, it feels like it's done. It's out of the way at that point. I guess, and I don't want us to be repeating ourselves, but the kind of next question I had for you is, what tips do you have when it comes to budgeting, saving, and investing?
So I think budgeting, saving, investing. So budgeting, I would say, get clear on the numbers and have a plan. It doesn't have to be the 50-30-20 rule. As I say, it's just a popular kind of method. Have some sort of plan. Have some sort of idea where your money is going. There's a number of benefits for that, because it means that you've got control of your money. You can identify maybe where you need to save some money, or change some of the habits that you've got into. But also it means that when you do spend money, or you go out for dinner, that you can do that guilt-free and have some fun with some of your money. So there is a real benefit to budgeting. What was the second one you asked? The budgeting,
saving, and investing.
So savings, top tip would be to first of all look at, and same with investing as well, because as we were talking about this kind of hierarchy of financial needs. So once you've got your foundations right and your budget, and you know you've got some, if you're lucky to have some spare cash, to start looking at having an emergency fund. The next area you can look at is what are you going to do with, you know, any money that's left over after that. And you've got, you know, savings, investing. Do you want to put it into pension? Are you looking to buy a house? So I think that's where you've got to take a step back, isn't it? And then start thinking, right, what are my financial goals? What do I want with this money? Is this extra money going to be a holiday pot for next year? In which case you're going to do something different with it. Is this extra money going to be for buying a house in 5 years' time? Or again, even more like longer term, is this money going to be for, I'm going to put this extra money away for my retirement so that, you know, I've got some retirement money building up. So I guess the next thing would be is to look at maybe what do you actually want to do with your money long term, and, you know, setting yourself some financial goals for those monies, and then the rest kind of falls into place. But I would say before, you know, one of the things that sometimes gets lost is it's really, really important to first of all have the emergency fund, but also to make sure that your income is just protection in general for yourself, not just your income. So things like you've got your house insurance and car insurance in place. You've got possible income protection. Now, if you're employed, you are likely to have some form of sick pay through work, and you might find that that's, you know, enough for you. But also things like life cover and critical illness cover all come under this financial resilience, so that if anything unexpected happens to you, that you can continue to afford at least the basics, the foundations, you know, so that, you know, that those are covered. Then you can start looking at and as I say, it might be that looking at it and looking at what you get from work is absolutely enough for you. Lots of employees have and lots of employers have really, really good schemes in place for sickness, life cover, critical illness, you know, health cover, medical benefits, all of those kind of things through work. So it may be that you don't need to do any more, and actually you can start looking at savings and investing and, you know, pensions and all those kind of things next. So my top tips for savings is don't chase down, this is quite an interesting, don't chase down the best interest rates, because sometimes it may very well be that it's more suitable for your circumstances to have it. We talked about having it all in one place because you can automate it really easily, and that might be more important to you than getting a better, you know, 0.5% more on your savings somewhere else. So it's weighing up what's important to you, whether getting the best interest rate or you know, easy access, whether you want to use your ISA allowance. All of those kind of things come into play with regards to savings. My top tip for investing is find out as much as you can. First of all, do some research about investing, and really you should be looking at not wanting to touch that money for at least 3 to 5 years, because the very nature of investment is there is some form of risk to your capital. So which means that the value of your investment can go up and down. And you've got to give yourself an opportunity that if you put the money in and the market goes against you, that you've got time to make that back up again. Otherwise, it's, you know, it's a loss.
Yeah, for sure. I guess I'm going to ask a question around my kind of situation, I guess, because it's the easiest way to ask it. You said about life insurance first off, or insurance. The people like me who aren't, and people like us who aren't under a policy from their workplace, where is a good place to go to get a good one, which is all around?
That is a really good question. And what I would say is that you probably should find a protection only broker, which sounds like a really jargony thing to say, and I'm really sorry. But you can find advisors who can advise just on those kind of policies on their own, who are qualified to be able to advise on that. And there is a website called Unbiased, which you can literally just go to and type it, and they've got on their front page. In fact, I might just bring it up to, oh no, it's fine, it would be too complicated, but Unbiased, and you literally, they've got, I'm just trying to think, insurance brokers, protection advisors, financial advisors, and mortgage brokers, and you type in your postcode and it gives you a list of people locally. But find a really good protection advisor. They're all rated on there. People will have given them like the benefits, and they will be able to give you an idea. More, I'm just trying to think of maybe some people who are disturbing the market in that place, that kind of area, that might be a good place to look for. I can't think what the name is off the top of my head.
If it comes to you, say it. But I guess then my second part is around pensions, and because I think for a lot of companies, for a lot of people who are employed, pensions is partly done, right? You put into your pension. Correct me if I'm wrong. I haven't been employed for a long time, but the car you put into your pension, company will match it. For us self-employed individuals, what's the best plan of action? And if you are, especially if you've got a limited company, and then not only that, I invest more so into a pension. What's your recommendation for that? Because I see my investment as the long term, my pension for the future. What's the recommendation for that?
Okay, so let me take a step back. You're absolutely right that if you're employed, your employer will provide you with a pension, a workplace pension. That is now in law. There are a few variables depending on how much you earn, and the absolute minimum that they will be investing with your contribution, which will be taken directly from your salary, either before tax or after tax. I won't get into that in too much detail today. Is 8%. Mm-hmm. So you will be, if you're employed nowadays, paying into some form of workplace pension. Mm-hmm. That's a whole another podcast for another day. So let's move that out the way. Mm-hmm. But as a self-employed person, you would need to create your own pension pot with a pension provider of your choice. Mm-hmm. And again, there are some differences between being a sole trader and a limited company. If you're a limited company, I would suggest speaking to your accountant about it, because there are some tax benefits for the company for making contributions. And I would definitely recommend that you speak to a pension advisor, financial advisor, to get advice on that, and to get a recommendation, because there are some real tax nuances about how you make the contribution, whether it's the company that makes it or whether it's you as an individual rich that makes it. That is probably a bit too in-depth to go into on here today. But your next question is, what should you be considering as an investment? The general rule is that the longer you've got the investment you've got, the more capacity to take some investment risk. So we talked about investment risk and the value of your investments going up and down. I'm trying to keep this reasonably simple, but there are different investments that have different risks. So there are lower risk investments right the way up to higher risk investments. The general rule of thumb is the longer you've got to invest, the more capacity for risk you've got to take. So you can take, and so you might want to take a higher risk with your pension than you would do for something that you're saving for 5 years, because you've got a longer period of time to ride up the ups and downs. And the higher the risk that you take, the potential for better returns there are. So low risk investments. So if you take your bank and building society, that's a very low risk environment. You won't get potentially as much in a bank or building society as you would do by investing your money. And likewise, in a low risk environment, potentially the return is lower than what you could get in a higher risk investment over a long period of time. I need to keep my arms a bit shorter, don't I? But that's your capacity. Now, what actually drives what investment you may or may not make is your appetite for risk. So if you go on to some of the big pension providers, like let's just say Fidelity or AJ Bell or Investec, whoever, a lot of those companies will have a risk questionnaire where they will actually ask you specific questions, and they will then generate like, you should take a medium risk, or you should take a low risk, or you should take a high risk.
Yeah.
And that's what drives what you should be invested in. Because the last thing you want to do is put your money into your pension. Something like the pandemic comes along, it loses 30%, and you spend your whole time worrying about when's it going to get back to where it is. And there are people who feel like that about investing. There are other people who couldn't care less, never look at it, don't worry about it. It's in 30 years' time, I don't care. So whatever it's doing in between, I'll get there when it's 30 years. You know, so as with everything in life, people have different
situations.
Yeah, well, not situations, but different. They're wired differently, aren't they? So you know, some people are happy taking a risk. Some people drive faster. Some people drive slower. It's all the same kind of thing. But in answer to your question, from a capacity point of view, the longer you've got, the more risk you potentially can take. But it is really driven by then how you actually feel about putting your money into that kind of environment.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, look, I'm very aware that we are slowly getting to that 45-minute mark, but I have got a really important question around debt, because I think this is probably an important one for financial stress as well, right? So don't rush the answer. But what is your tip for managing debt and trying to get yourself out of debt?
Okay, so again, just going back to the previous question, when you're looking at saving and investing, one of the things that you also need to have a look at is whether you've got any debt. And when we're talking about debt, high interest debt is what we're talking about. A mortgage is slightly different. It's a controlled amount. You know roughly how much you're paying. There is a plan to pay that off. It's secured. You know, we're talking here things like if you've got credit card debt, paying. I think the average UK credit card interest rate at the moment is 24.6%. It's huge, isn't it? So first of all, when you're looking at saving and investing, you need to have a look and see if you've got any high interest debt, loans, credit cards, you know, those kind of things that really you should be looking to pay down first. And then when you're looking at paying off those debts, you've got you know, if you've got an extra 20% at the end of the month, let's stick to the 50-30-20, then there's various different ways you can approach paying down your debt. So there's two main ones, which again you've probably heard of, Rich, is the avalanche method or the snowball method.
Not heard of either.
Oh, have you not? Okay.
No.
So again, this is just an idea for people. It's not saying what you should do. It's not saying it's the best idea. Again, having a plan to pay down your debt is the most important part of this. So the avalanche method is that you write down all of your debts, you write down all of the interest and all of the payments that you're making. And the avalanche method is you pick the debt with the highest interest rate first and you pay that off first. So again, you maintain all of your minimum payments because that is really, really important. But you pick the one with the highest interest rate and you allocate your 20% to that until that's paid off. And then you move on to the next one and you pay that off. And then you pay the next one off. And the idea is that over time, as you pay them off, you will overall pay less interest over the length of all of the loans or the credit cards or whatever you've got. The snowball method, which you'll probably like, I think, probably as a coach, is that you prioritize all of your balances because you've written them all down and you pay the smallest debt off first, because that starts the ball rolling, the snowball, as it were, starts it rolling. It gives you, you then move on to the next bigger and the next bigger, and it builds motivation and confidence, and you feel great because you're paying it off. It feels like you're paying it off quicker, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You have this whole snowball effect of, you know, paying down your debts. I think, does that answer the question, Rich?
Yeah, I think the collaboration between the 50-30-20 and having that 20% extra for that, and then having a couple of tools around over paying off the small first. My brain goes, oh, okay, well, I don't want to pay any more money, so let's pay off the big first. So yeah, the avalanche one works a bit better for me. Is there any?
It's two good ways of planning it, and as I say, it doesn't matter how you do it. At the end of the day, it's actually doing it.
I've also heard about people combining all their debts into one.
Yeah.
And then that one credit card or that one debt pays off all of them. So it just goes into one account, and then they're paying off that one account. Is that a good?
There's pros and cons, isn't there? Like there is with everything. I think it depends on interest rate. So if you are consolidating maybe 4 credit cards into one 0% credit card, absolutely, you're paying way less interest, and it really does make sense, doesn't it? If you're moving lower rate, I don't know, bank loans into credit cards, doesn't, if you're paying higher interest, it doesn't make so much sense. But ultimately, it's what works for you. And, I'm not here to tell you what the right or wrong answer is. I'm here to give you the options for you to be able to go and work out what works best for you and gives you the best motivation and the best chance of being able to pay those off. Another way would be to gamify it, wouldn't be? Like set yourself a challenge, like, can I pay this debt off by X, Y, Z? And like give yourself a treat, even if you manage to do it, or penalize yourself and maybe take an extra bit from your 30% that if you don't meet it. So there are lots of ways to do it, and there isn't a right or wrong answer. It is just giving yourself the options. But Rich, I was just going to say is, like, we talked a lot about people obviously having the money to be able to do the 50-30-20 rule, but there is the potential that there will be people who do the 50-30-20 and realize that they can't afford to pay their bills, they can't afford to make their minimum payments on their debts. And I think it's really important that we just, if it's okay with you, just sort of quickly just chat through what happens in those circumstances. There is lots and lots of help out there for you. So a good one would be energy bills at the moment. There's been lots of talk. The energy price cap has gone up again recently, and that will have an impact on people. Again, with interest rates increasing, there could be people who are coming off fixed rate who now may not be able to afford their mortgage every month. So there is lots of help available out there. The absolute first thing you should do if you're struggling to pay any of your bills is speak to your provider before you miss any of miss any payments, because that will put you in much better stead. And energy companies, they are being really lent on heavily by the government to provide as much help as they possibly can do before they will put you into arrears or put a mark on your credit reference. The same with mortgages. So there was some changes, especially during the cost of living crisis. The government really did lean on mortgage companies to be, to really, really make sure that people were not getting into arrears if they possibly can help it. And I think people are worried that they might lose their houses with regards to not paying their mortgage or contacting their provider, but that really isn't the case. The last thing the bank really wants to do is actually repossess your home and have to try and sell it on, because they're likely to make a loss. So there is lots and lots of help out there, and the first step is to speak to your providers. But if you don't feel like you're able to do that yourself, there are I'm going to mention 2 charities who can give you free confidential advice, and it is advice, and they will tell you what to do. They will help you do the budgets, they will help you speak to your providers, and in some instances they can arrange what's called breathing space for you, so you can actually take a step back and and then come back into it to be able to sort it out. And the 2 charities are Step Change and the National Debt Line, and they will be able to give you, as I say, free confidential advice. Just talking to them doesn't affect your credit score in any way, shape or form. So that's a common myth that that people have, is that speaking to them will affect your credit score. It doesn't. So there's 2 places there. The other place which people probably have never heard of, because it's probably the best kept secret and is something that I bang on about a lot, is there's a company called, well, it's not a company, it's a website called moneyhelper.org. And that is a government-backed website which has information on any financial subject that you can possibly think of. So how to create a budget, where to go to create a budget, It'd have information about the 50-30-20 rule, how to pay down your debts, the snowball, the average. It has all of that, and what to do if you're really struggling. So that's a really, really good resource, and that's moneyhelper.org. What I'll do is I'll go and pop, after we've finished today, I'll go in the comments addresses.
And is it Martin
Lewis? Yeah, the money and mental health.org, as well as a good Martin Lewis himself is obviously a good source of information, but he has a charity called Money and Mental Health.
So that's also a great place, I know. But no, look, thank you, Abby. I really appreciate all of this. I think it's been really helpful. I've got some bits that I need to go and do, and I think hopefully some other people have got some advice from that as well. So I really appreciated it.
Bit of a stop tour, and we've covered quite a lot of ground. But I think the main takeaway would probably be, like, it doesn't matter what your plan looks like. Just try and have a plan and know where you're starting from. So, like, make sure you are, you know what's coming in and what's going out. And that sometimes is the hardest bit, because you know that one doesn't cover the other. There is lots of help and support. And if anybody is struggling, feel free to reach out to me. I'm always happy to help people.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you for that. I was going to ask you for your top 3 tips, but I feel like you kind of given that, and I think it's one really big one, isn't it? It's just actually understanding those kind of numbers, and that's been the first process. From there, you can figure out what the next step is from there.
Yeah, and if anybody, like I say, if anybody wants any help with that, feel free to DM me and reach out. I'm more than happy to help people.
Yeah, wicked. Abby, thank you. I really appreciate it. I think I've really enjoyed and learned a lot. I hope everybody else has. Look, this will be going on Spotify and YouTube, so people can listen to this back whenever they like. But yeah, thank you again. And as Abby said, if you want to speak to her, reach out to her, and follow her on her LinkedIn as well, where she'll share all the cool stuff she's doing. Otherwise, everybody have a great week, and we'll speak to you in a couple of weeks for our next podcast. Otherwise, Abby, thank you.
No worries. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.